Welcome to the Clarion, the first episode of Claremont Presbyterian Church's podcast. And it seems fitting that we would start with one of our favorite mission partners, Lisa Heilig, the executive director of Thca Hills Community Alliance, the Reverend Dr.
Yes.
Lisa Heilig, actually. And you are an ordained minister in the MCC tradition.
Yes, I am.
Which has sort of a crossover with the UCC. Yes? No?
A
Little bit?
lot of alliances. I'm also seeking standing in the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries, which actually does have a formal relationship with the United Church of Christ.
Excellent, excellent.
So,
okay. And you have been a pastor for how long?
I've been ordained since 2001.
All right.
But I have been pastoring in some sort of way since I was 14 years old.
Wow. Fantastic. Does the story of your commitment to attending to the needs of the working poor reach all the way back to that 14-year-old call?
Absolutely. Absolutely. When I actually, my native tongue of denominationalism is United Methodist. So I grew up in a United Methodist church, and as part of our youth group activities, we were very, very committed to service. And so, I mean, obviously, like when I was in Sunday school, we learned about these things, but this is where we really lived it out. And this is where I really felt like all of those Sunday school stories we heard about Jesus, this is what we were doing. We were helping people. We were feeding people. We took mission trips to Appalachia to help people weatherize their homes so they could make it through the winters. We did all of those kinds of things. I became very involved with Special Olympics in high school.
As did I. My high school actually hosted the Special Olympics in Durham. And I got to be involved in training students week after week by going to their school during my free period and working on the events. And then we hosted the event itself.
That was, I actually... In my senior year of high school, I lived in South Florida. Miami Herald gave me an award for student service.
Oh, that's fantastic!
I know that was a very long time ago, but it is indicative of the fact that for me, as a person of deep faith, my faith has always been connected to action.
Yes, the Lord has been cultivating in you. Gifts and a desire to meet people at their place of need.
Absolutely, 110% true.
Yeah. So the reason why we're doing this podcast is that in this season, when we are not in our sanctuary, we want to use it as an opportunity to sort of turn around and look at our neighborhood, sort of take that, not necessarily 5,000 foot view, but maybe 1,000 foot view to sort of look at the neighborhood that surrounds us and ask, who's here?
Yes.
Who are they?
Yep.
What do they want? What are their desires? What are their needs? And how can we come alongside each other to mutually meet one another's needs, to improve our neighborhood, however it is that it needs to be improved? And we're realizing that we have to redefine who our neighbor is in order to do that. Because I think for decades, the church has thought neighbor equals resident.
Right.
And we think about the neighborhoods that surround us. But the unique thing about our church is we're literally across the street from two other churches.
Right.
We are diagonally across the street from some businesses.
Yes.
We are across the street from a townhome complex, and then we have immediate residential neighbors on Azalea Circle. But we're a mile from the VA hospital.
Exactly.
We're a mile from you at Thca Hills Community Alliance,
Yes.
which is behind St. Bartholomew's Episcopal Church. Then we've got all of our Jewish neighbors in the 9 synagogues that surround your church in particular, your agency in particular.
Yes.
And then there is the whole monstrosity of Thca Hills Shopping Center. And as much as those are brick and mortar stores, they are not only filled with shoppers, they are filled with the people who work there, who
Yes.
every day their livelihood is to drive there.
Yes.
So we're beginning to ask some questions that help us expand our definition of neighbor,
Yeah.
and perhaps even help us think outside the box of who we can collaborate with, whose needs are on the surface, but we don't know how to look for them, how to gain access into places like the VA hospital. And I think to develop a deeper understanding of the working poor. And that's where we're leaning towards you with some hope that you can give us some insight. You mentioned that at 14 and older, you went on some service trips to Appalachia. I think we often, as youth, have a tendency to direct kids towards Jamaica or the Dominican Republic, where the needs are extreme and necessary. But in some ways, my hope is that that actually gives us eyes and ears to see and hear our neighbors. That animated you. Tell me.
Yes, because that's actually what it did for me and for, some of my friends. But it's actually what it did, because when we came back from Appalachia, I grew up in South Florida, it was easier to see that, right down the street are a group of immigrants, migrant workers, living right around us, and say, oh, there are needs right here in our backyard. And so I think our youth group leaders were very smart in that, and they helped us make those connections. And sometimes we don't do well making those connections. We're like, oh yeah, those poor people over there. No, none of the neighborhoods that we live in, virtually none of them are untouched by some form of poverty, food insecurity, all of the things. We no longer live in a society where everything is neatly segregated, which in some ways is amazing and wonderful. And in some ways means that those of us that have any amount of privilege really do need to work to open our eyes, open our hearts, open our hands. And I would be remiss as an executive director if I didn't say open our wallets.
Exactly.